Good evening and welcome to NYCryptoTalk. Today's ICO review is on a very interesting project called Shivom, and what it is basically decentralizing the genome, your DNA information on the blockchain. Think 23andMe and Ancestry.com rolled onto the blockchain, plus a lot more information. So I found this Shivom project through just announcements on Twitter about their Telegram group being so massive. So I thought, if they have this big following behind them, there should be some good information. So digging a little deeper, much deeper today, I found a lot of interesting information on the project as far as what they plan to do. So I am going to try to dig as deep as possible, give you the information, let you guys know what I think, and obviously you guys will do your own research, but it is a very, very cool project. I think they have a working model that will definitely revolutionize the way we think about our DNA and being able to make the world better in certain ways that we currently don't have the option to do so right now with a centralized model. So what is Shivom? So Shivom is a unique and empowering project. They basically will enable DNA data donors to collaborate with revolutionary change makers in biotech, healthcare industry, and government-ordained research institutes and contribute to an unprecedented era of medical marvels. So what is the genome, or what they will call genomics? You'll see in a few of these pages. Basically, what it does is multiple things. Identifying the course of care for patients with a particular condition through DNA, the prevention of diseases in healthy individuals, so people who might be prevalent to get a certain disease, predictions of disease risk, disease diagnosis, treatments, including the medication and dosage, things that normally are not always predictive. A doctor's hypothesis on what you might need might not always be 100% true. Identification of new drug targets, and this is all done through different genome sequencing. They have different ways of doing it through exome sequencing, which is for disease-causing DNA, and then whole genome sequencing, which is basically the complete chromosomal DNA as well as the DNA contained in mitochondria. You guys remember that word in high school, I'm sure, mitochondria. So going into the project, I want to explain a little bit on the objective that they have, what they plan to do, how they plan to deploy it, what their partnerships might be, as well as their strategic alliances, their team, and kind of the news that's been going on with the Shivom project. So they basically want to become the largest genomic data hub on the planet. Contributors own their own genomic data, their DNA data, control the rights to access it, and they can receive rewards if they choose to share it. And this can also be done anonymously, of course. So there's a great way of being able to get the data out there on the blockchain, utilize it for good reasons, as well as being able to get incentives for it. So incentivizing putting your DNA out there that might help someone in the future, that is a good incentive. I mean, obviously you don't need an incentive, but nowadays, the world we live in, everything needs to be incentivized. So yes, people donate blood, but sometimes people only do it because they're doing it for money or whatever the case might be. So they have an ecosystem, and what their ecosystem is to transform the DNA data into usable information, break down the data silos that are currently contained right now, help accelerate clinical trials through proper DNA sequencing as opposed to just random trials, facilitate drug research and development, and sponsor sequencing projects to get access to relevant data. Shivom's vision is basically to accelerate the age of genomics. Out of every one of the 7.6 billion people on Earth, each person has a unique code within their genes that unlocks secrets to the appearance, ancestry, intellectual capabilities, health, fitness, but this code's ability to reveal predisposition to disease has been overlooked. So they want to be able to do that by improving global health, getting the data. By utilizing the data, they can use it to create precise medicine, also ensure that the data is secure. There's a lot of data breaches when it comes to personal health information, which I'll go into. So this is one of the reasons to decentralize it and have the cryptography of the blockchain utilized for the data of your DNA. And genomics for everyone, basically what they're saying is right now a lot of the DNA that's being provided to all these major contributors, major companies in the world, are of one type of representation, but many ethnic and geographical populations are still underrepresented in the public databases. So by utilizing this information, they can get more information about certain areas, certain diseases, certain DNA strands, and obviously that will create a new global personalization healthcare ecosystem that can transform lives, as they say. Going to their ecosystem, this is their platform. So basically what they want to do is to transform the data into knowledge, break down the silos, and to facilitate a wide range of omics, as they say, based activities in drug research and development. So these omics are different ways of utilizing the data within the pharmaceutical industry. The alpha trials is basically the two projects or two main focuses right now on what they plan on doing. And the first one is Global Citizen, which is basically getting your genome sequenced or uploading your existing data. So this is where they'll have kits available, or you can upload your existing data from like 23andMe or Ancestry.com, and that will then be built into the database. And then the pharma R&D, which is being able to take that data and enable precision medicine by analyzing the genome and the health data provided. Looking at their team, Dr. Axel Schumacher is the CEO, and he has 20 years in this field of genomics, epigenetics, biomarker discovery, bio-IT, aging and longevity. He is also an author of the Blockchain and Healthcare Strategy Guide. So he is a leader in the field of DNA sequencing, and this is a right fit, obviously, because this is what his life has been all about. If you look at the rest of their team, there is a lot of doctors on board, a lot of people in the genetics industry. And if you go down, I won't go through all the team, but a lot of the people involved are either blockchain, genetics, along the same field that the whole project is going along with. The three main advisors that I notice, obviously, that are the big players, which they always highlight on the top of the list, is Taavi Rauhaas, who was the Prime Minister of the Republic of Estonia, and he is also currently part of the Parliament of Estonia. Antanas Guoga is, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, is a Lithuanian representative at the European Parliament. And then the main person who I think they should probably have as the first one, but is Dr. Jay Sanders, who's the what they call is the father of telemedicine. He is also on the U.S. telemedicine initiatives for the G8 and the pioneer advocate and activist in the field of telemedicine. He trailblazed a new frontier for physicians and the medical profession. So he is a huge person when it comes to bringing something that was not normally on the internet or on, obviously in this case, the blockchain, into the digital world. So using telemedicine was something people didn't think about. So by bringing DNA to the blockchain is something unique. So I think having that kind of key player is very, very cool. Moving to the latest news and events. The first thing, as I mentioned before, this is how I heard about Shivom, is their Telegram community being such a large one, 70,000 plus. So that was one of their most recent accomplishments. And then the biggest that I think, which is the most interesting, is that they signed an agreement with the Indian government of Andhra Pradesh, which is a state in India with 60 million residents. And by 2025, they want to be able to do a DNA sequencing of all of them. And the article is here. It's really cool about the connection between blockchain and DNA. The Indian state government plans to store residents' DNA on the blockchain. And it's really cool. I will actually mention it below, but basically they want to be able to have this information on the blockchain to be able to have the valuable information about their residents and all the analytics that could come with their DNA sequencing. The Shivom and DeHedge jointly announced, and DeHedge is basically a hedging platform that will work on backing the Shivom tokens. They're hedging $3 million against the Shivom tokens, and they can guarantee 50% coverage of these risks. So very cool project. There's more information about it if you Google DeHedge. I believe they also have an ICO going on, so it's very interesting. And Shivom formally announced its strategic alliance with the Genetic Technologies Limited, so a diversified molecular diagnostics company, provider of, I can't pronounce that, a first-in-class clinically validated risk assessment test for sporadic breast cancer. So they're working with a company that basically provides a risk assessment test for breast cancer, similar to how they'll be providing a DNA test that will give the information that might be able to detect for things like breast cancer, since there is a test that is out there for people who have hereditary breast cancer to be able to do that assessment. Going to the pitch deck now. So I will kind of run through what they have here on a pitch deck. Their white paper is very, very long. I do not want to drag this. So I want to hit on the highlights that I think are major when it comes to the project and as far as getting what they want to accomplish with getting this information on the blockchain. So their vision is to be able to get their genome sequence and stored and on their ecosystem. It'll allow a open marketplace for other providers to add their app services alongside the DNA, data analytics, and personalized medicine. Their solution will create a shared value for individuals, nonprofits, government, and for-profit entities alike. So anyone can use this for whatever use cases there might be. They plan to build the largest data hub for DNA on the planet. And this goes into what is genomics. I kind of talked about that before. And what is the challenges right now? Basically, the data right now is in entrusted third-party organizations. The data is being sold for profit institutions without people's knowledge. If you go to 23andMe and Ancestry.com, you basically give up the rights to your DNA information. And what with Shivom, they're not allowing that. You can sell it if you want. You can trade it if you want, but you own that data. Huge market share and millions of revenue to large companies making money on donors' data. Patients effectively paying twice for data and higher drug prices. So this is like the long way of what impacts the DNA information. So this more of the market data. And this talks about the exponential growth in the market, and this is the cost of being able to do DNA sequencing. They're basically saying that the cost now is so low to be able to get your DNA sequenced that the market is primed for this kind of project to actually be sustained. Market size, so these are the predictions for the future. The global healthcare market, they project to be 8.7 trillion by 2020. The medicine market to be almost 113 billion by 2025. And 90% of the people in the United States will be sequenced within the next 20 years. So that's the estimate. Right now, you can see how many people have been sequenced through 23andMe is about 1 million. Their market value is 1.1 billion. Ancestry DNA is 4 million people have been sequenced, and their value is 2.6 billion. Helix, we don't know, but they've raised 100 million. And obviously, as I mentioned before, Shivom's proof of concept is going to be 60 million people on their platform with just that state of India. And once they roll out the project, they will be able to have that much higher value. So blockchain tech and ICOs, and this is kind of almost like my mantra. Investors should aim to buy tokens of projects that are likely to succeed and cause token values to rise, similar to venture capitalists buying shares in startups. So I always say, look at a project that has a value, it has a use case, and kind of where they go is the same thing. This is thinking about outside the box of blockchain and just thinking about the future of our health, the future of just the society in general. So I kind of think that's a cool statement to have here. And the Shivom ecosystem basically talks about the integration between the user, the blockchain, pharmaceutical companies selling the data, the physician having the information and knowing your medicine, if you cannot drink or not drink. I think that's kind of funny. And their solutions. So decentralized blockchain where data is being secured and owned by the donor, patients being incentivized directly for donating data to research studies, whole genome test at subsidized rates being brought to the masses, complete control of the patient over accessibility in a secure fashion. So this means for the doctors, single largest repository of genome data for R&D, precision medicine, and DNA supercomputing. And it will be an app marketplace and sharing economy on top of the blockchain for full DNA data integration. This talks about the ecosystem, more visualization of the data, the developer community, partner organizations, the patients, the pharmaceutical companies, and how the data will be basically generated. The partnership and business model is basically showing where their target customers are, partnerships are, competition, and their target market, what their market profile is. So it's kind of cool where they talk about their customers is the healthcare industry, R&D, pharma, government, pretty much anyone. And then they talk about the competition, how information is it's risk for the person, people right now, and things are in silos. They talk about their existing partnerships that they are already starting with their mission goals, and they're actively working to collaborate with an increasing number of partners across multiple industries. The proof of concept, as I mentioned, 60 times more than what 23andMe has with their proof of concept, and this is kind of a visual representation of the individual patient. The genome information goes on. There's a public key. It's encrypted. The private key is in the individual patient's hand, and the person can then open, decrypt, and provide it to a researcher as needed. This is the proof of concept of their dashboard and their tokens. This is the utility side of their tokens. So what the Omics tokens is, and Omics is the Shivom token name OMIX. The benefits and the utility of is acquiring premium services in the ecosystem, ability to acquire genome sequencing kits, ordering the kits, ability to sponsor projects, acquiring access to health fitness apps from third-party providers, ability to access genome database, ability to pay data donor for data participation in research studies, and acquiring access for service providers to use the platform. Acquiring tokens, obviously the main places are token sales, secondary markets, but there's also rewards, and that is through things like the research studies and so forth. So it's a very cool way of being able to get that information. The token sale has 990 million Omics utility tokens out of the 3 billion Omics tokens, so that's 33% of the total supply, and they break down what everything else is. And there's an incentivizing growth pool, which is total supply of tokens that will be secured in a smart contract allocated to the database and introduced in circulation as rewards for data generation. So very cool that will actually be 20% of the total. And the company reserve, which could also be associated with nonprofit R&D efforts, which I think is kind of cool. They don't usually get into too many details of what the company's use of proceeds is. Their shares. The use of proceeds of the token sale is broken out here, and this all looks pretty good to me when it comes to where they're actually putting their money. The labs, R&D, platform development, operations, legal, sequencing, data storage, and marketing 21%. So I actually think this is an awesome breakdown when it comes to where their sales are actually coming from. Moving to the white paper, I wanted to go over some of the highlights that I saw here that was not highlighted in the pitch deck. So this talks about the pharmaceutical companies and healthcare providers and how the cost for this kind of DNA sequencing could actually get decreased, and what the solution is. And this kind of goes into their main platform. With recent technology advancement, evolving patient needs, and increasingly outdated business model, both the pharmaceutical and global healthcare are under intense pressure to innovate via increased R&D. Basically, by providing this DNA sequencing, a lot of this can be relieved since things like the FDA started tracking pharmaceutical information for all approved drugs in 2009. The number of FDA-approved drugs with pharmacogenomics information to their labeling has grown to over 160 drug biomarker pairs. So it's kind of cool that this can actually go all the way down to R&D to the FDA. Being able to provide this information is really informative. Being able to impact such a huge market, basically. Patient stratification. So, as I mentioned before, only a small group of people currently are studied in clinical trials. Without the data, the DNA data, it's hard to know who will respond to a certain treatment. This wastes time and resources. By using the DNA data, researchers can use to figure out which patients are likely to be responsive to a treatment. Plus, they can also target a subgroup of those patients that will benefit the most. This allows for effective treatments to be available more quickly and less expensive. Going to the actual DNA sequencing types, Shivom's database basically allows you to monetize the information as well as use the genome to access information that will support the health and longevity of the individuals. So utilizing the two different types of genome sequencing, the exome, the EX, and the WGS, the whole genome sequencing, they can get the two different types of kits available for individuals. And these will be most likely subsidized through partnerships that they can use to figure out your information. Most companies nowadays would probably be using EX, exome sequencing, which won't give you all the information. If you ever looked at, obviously they might not provide all the information. If you ever looked at 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, a lot of the information is not out there. They don't give you too much information. Things like if you have, you and a partner got your DNA testing, and if you were to have children, would there be any potential for the children to have things like Tay-Sachs or other autoimmune disorders, things that can be identified through DNA sequencing? Whole genome sequencing would allow that information to be shared with the individuals. So it's kind of cool to be able to have those options. The open source platform available for Shivom is going to have two things. One is the open marketplace, which is where the different services such as health apps, nutritional fitness device, ancestry information, treatment plans, genealogy, disease predisposition, high throughput data analytics, pharmacogenomics, I couldn't say that, I'm sorry, and lifestyle management, among others. So these different things will be on the open marketplace, as well as the healthcare providers, which will have the ability to buy and purchase the data that is provided on the Shivom network. Counselors, so Shivom plans to build a network of counselors that can use the telemedicine ecosystem to reach out to individuals, basically counselors for the genetic data, and talk to people and deal with people. So this might be a service that's offered, and they'll be responsible to provide education and risk interpretation for consumers, as well as supporting health promotion models. The research and development clinical trials, so obviously they will provide big data information to pharmaceutical companies that will help support studies, help establish patient cohorts, provide insight to further classify and clinical trial population. Patient recruitment, obviously the clinical trials will not always get the right people into a clinical trial, so that's one of the things they want to be able to utilize the platform for. And of course, data quality and reproducibility. Unique global ID. So one of the things about the DNA sequencing is they will be able to link your specific DNA sequence to a unique identifier, even if you were to update or upload your information from multiple places. and they will be able to make one unique ID out of it. They won't allow multiple DNA sequencing to be on the platform, which is kind of cool because everyone is unique. Smart contracts will be handled, and this will all be done through the ERC20 token. This will allow for the storing and easily accessing all your genome in one place, control who can access it, manage how research, physicians, or family members can use the data, find health and lifestyle information, identify and remove potential health roadblocks before they get serious. Compliance. So if you're not familiar, depending on where you are and where you're viewing this, healthcare systems worldwide are having a lot of issues with patient data. A lot of theft, a lot of hacks have occurred in the last few years. It has been one of the biggest things when it comes to privacy regulation in most countries. So there is a general data protection regulation in the EU, and they're going to be adhering to it and going even further as far as regulating their information per the EU guidelines. They will also be doing the same thing with the HIPAA guidelines in the United States to make sure that they are secure and everything is confidential. So this is kind of a cool thing on how the smarter healthcare will work with Shivom. Prevention, taking into account variability in genes, environment, and lifestyle, finding the right drug for the right patient at the right time, accurately diagnose, treat, and deliver care, communication with stakeholders decentralized yet easy to access, data protected against cyber criminals, active and informed patients, cost-efficient delivery models, include all ethnic groups and underprivileged, empowered patients, improved efficiency, better healthcare. So, and also better insights with big data and AI, which is something in their roadmap for down the road. So all information that I think is really cool on how they want to be able to implement this and have this information on the blockchain. Going to the blockchain, they do plan to be blockchain agnostic, meaning they can be utilized and the platform can be worked on multiple different blockchains. They plan to base it upon the Hyperledger Fabric, which is also known as the BigChainDB framework, and the IOTA Tangle. But it can be worked with other platforms as well. They utilize a thing called the Shivom protocol and the Human Digital DNA Vault, and this is their own protocols which will actually manage all the information, encrypt all the information, and it's all role-based depending on the data within the system. Going to the architecture, as I mentioned, the smart contracts all based on the ERC20 token. The blockchain agnostic program can be run on Hyperledger Fabric, Ethereum, Qtum, and other blockchains. Hyperledger Fabric will be shown in this white paper as an example. The main components of the blockchain are the dApps, the actual Ethereum blockchain. The main purpose is to handle the smart contracts. The Hyperledger Fabric, which contains multiple parts of the purpose of having the smart contract, storing metadata and providing access to the DNA in a decentralized way. And this talks about the BigChain BD and the protocol, which is to be able to scale long-term and add AI capabilities, which is awesome. They talk about what their business model is, how they'll work. Obviously, Shivom will be taking a transactional fee for the sequencing through the application, service providers, and network efforts. So obviously, they do take transactional fees that pays for the platform whenever a use is done. And moving to the token utilization, I hit on a lot of these things earlier for both the users and organizations alike, as far as what the Shivom token and use cases will be for the project. All really cool. Definitely check this out on the white page. Moving to the roadmap, there is a lot of information on here, so do not get discouraged. We will get through it. We are currently in Q2, so right now we are looking at what happened so far, what we're looking at in the future. Omics tokens are distributed in Q2. The partnership was just announced with AP of India, the state of India, Project Gaia, which is the partnerships for sequencing pilots globally that starts in India, The beta version they plan to launch in Q2, and the establishment of sequencing processes and protocols also Q2 into Q3, and the next couple of items are all in Q3, which is the blockchain protocols, multiple encryptions, co-development of new SNP panel for rare complex diseases, their marketplace Q3, their first genomics lab setup in Q3, Shivom Foundation, the worldwide rollout of the platform in Q3, possibly Q4, hopefully it's Q3, the formation of the research division, the multi-omics generation in Q4, and AI platform in Q1. So AI platform would be great, obviously. So I'm very hopeful that this roadmap stays true to its nature and everything gets implemented as planned. Going to the actual token information for the ICO, as I mentioned before, they are planning to raise about $28 million, and this ICO will start in April and probably run until May. And the total tokens is 3 billion. As I mentioned before, they're looking to sell about 990 million for the ICO. What do I think of the project? What do I envision for Shivom in the future? Obviously, it is a huge leap when it comes to technology for this type of project. It is unique in the way that I think healthcare needs to move into a decentralized manner. DNA sequencing, having people's DNA out there, is just like having your social security information out there, and you should own it. And that's what they plan to do here with the decentralization. And you can incentivize it. You can help the world by sharing that data for research studies. If you're not currently a blood donor, or, some people do bone marrow, however you can help, I think is a great thing. And they do plan to try to get this rolled out worldwide, putting it on the blockchain with the current partnerships, being able to do a proof of concept with the Indian state government, eventually moving forward with other projects, with other vendors. I think this is definitely a big potential for 2018. It might be later in 2018, so don't quote me on this, but obviously it does still need a lot to get lifted off the ground. But being able to have signed contracts and having a hedge fund behind it, an ICO hedge fund, being able to sleep at night comfortably. So I definitely think it's an interesting project. Definitely read the white paper, check out what they have to offer. I think they do have a good project. I know that the ICO is not available in the United States, so just an FYI. So let me know what you guys think. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you have a great evening. Thanks again. Speak to you guys tomorrow.